Happy heat wave, everyone. Today is August 12th, 2021, and of course here in Portland we're expecting 107 degree temperature, high temperature today, which is pretty crazy for the rainy city of Portland. So one of the things that I've talked about with a lot of folks recently, and I thought I would share that with everyone, is what's going on with the market. Why is the market so hot right now? Why is that demand from buyers so high? And there's a number of factors that go into that. One of them is low interest rates, which we all know interest rates are at insanely low levels. That has been driving a lot of the markets. Last year in May, June, when interest rates were down in the threes, we're listening to Ivy Zelman, who is saying, you know what, everyone is predicting that this market is going to crash this year. Zillow Group and Wells Fargo and all sorts of other big investment banks were saying that by the end of the year, we're going to see depreciation in the housing market. And Ivy Zelman was saying absolutely not. Interest rates are going to trump fears of the coronavirus. And that seems to be what happened. That did drive our market pretty strong last year. And interest rates are still incredibly low. Home now means a lot more to folks this year than it has in previous years. So I think that's one of the things that's driving a lot of folks to the market. The way you live, how big your house is, how big your outside space is, all of a sudden became very, very important and drove a lot of folks to the market. And in addition to that, it also drove a lot of second home buyers to the market. Portland is somewhat of a second home market, but not like the coast or out in Bend or any of the ski areas or wildlife areas. But we do get folks that I call them grandkid chasers. We get folks from from California, from south of Portland, whose kids maybe can't afford to buy a house in San Francisco, LA, San Diego, so they come up here, they buy a home. Get jobs, buy a home, and then they start to have kids. And then we do get grandparents that come up, particularly in the market here in the Pearl District. They'll buy a little condo, a crash pad for them to come up and see the grandkids. So we do still have some secondary home market buyers in our area. The other thing that's coming up and is putting pressure on the market is just a big population swell that we're getting with millennials who are coming into the buying age. The home buying period of their lives. There are like 72 millennials. It's like the biggest population block in the United States, 72 million. And of those folks, they were recently polled and it's kind of a rough poll. I don't think it's super scientific, but around 70% of the millennials polled said that they would be interested in buying a home in the next few years. So if we just look at those numbers, given that some of those millennials might be buying homes together, it could mean as many as 35 million transactions in the next 4 to 5 years. In the United States, we typically only have 7 million transactions per year. So there is this big population that's hitting the market that's really driving things along. And then the other thing that we're competing with, maybe not so much in Portland, but and they call them the sand states. So down in Arizona and maybe a bit of Nevada, Texas, Florida, Georgia, we have institutional buyers who are competing with the regular home buyers. So what those are big investment houses who are taking last year the announced funds, so just the announced funds, $40 billion to the housing market. And what they're doing is buying not fix and rent, but necessarily not fix and rent, but build and rent. So they're buying homes or plots of lands or subdivisions and turning them into rental properties and earning income off of that from that method. So the rental market's really tight right now. So it's good for the rental market, but it's even that much more difficult for folks who are looking to buy their first time, their home, their primary residence, because it's taking these potential homes that might have been sold to buyers and taking them out of our sale market and putting them in the rental market. And a lot of those companies that kind of the suspicion is that they're doing this for capital preservation because they may be nervous about what's going on with stocks and bonds, and of course you don't get any money off of bonds these days. And then the last thing that's the problem is supply. Builders are having a hard time keeping up with the demand. Not only the cost of the materials, lumber materials were pretty crazy for a while and rather prohibitive, but they've come down since then, but they still have supply chain issues. So, on any given week, there's something that they can't get their hands on, which is delaying construction, costing them more and driving the price up even more. I had a conversation yesterday with a guy that I use who's a painter in town. He's a really good painter. If you need a recommendation, call me up. And he was painting a couple of listings that I had coming up. And his comment was, when he came in to chat with me to pick a couple things up, was he couldn't find any paint. He was having to put some jobs on hold for a week or two, hoping that the type of paint that he likes to use for exterior paint would show up on the market. It was a Sherwin-Williams, kind of a higher end for Sherwin-Williams, this type of paint, and he couldn't find it at all. So he was actually trying to find Sherwin-Williams stores and kind of source and go around and buy as much as he can. He did say that if you are a bigger, purchaser, not someone who's just buying, 40, 60 gallons of paint, but someone who's buying hundreds of gallons of paint for big projects, then yeah, you might get the materials before the smaller guy does. So that's kind of what's been going on. I'm curious to hear if anyone else has any anecdotes or any ideas about other sources of competition that we're dealing with, or where all the buyers are coming from. And I'm always here if you have any questions. Talk to you soon.